in this session, I'm going to deal with this very particular topic, active learning. Now, my first question to the audience is, can learning be passive? Now, if you ponder upon this question, learning, when it is said, it is not passive in any way. Learning is always an active process. But what is passive and what is active? Actually, the learner can either be active or passive. Learning in itself is an active process. So let's have a quick look at when I say there can be an active learner or a passive learner. Now, a passive learner, as the term indicates, means a learner who doesn't get involved in the teaching learning. So whatever activities are going in the class, he is not actively processing the information, but is there only. He doesn't respond to anything which is asked by the teacher. He doesn't give any reactions to whether he agrees or disagree with what a teacher is telling. He doesn't take notes in his own words. Now, when a student is only taking copious notes of what a teacher is saying, then he is not applying his own mind, but simply jotting down what is spoken by the teacher in the class. He doesn't interact with others. So no opportunities are created by the teacher to allow the learner to interact with the other students, or no questions are posed by the teacher so that a student interacts with the teacher. You don't provide any opportunity to the learner to clarify the doubts or pose question to the teacher. So all the time the teacher is active, teacher is passing on the information, explaining, communicating to the learners, but learners do not get opportunity to pose question or clarify their doubts. And the activities, tasks, problem solving exercises which can be integrated into the teaching learning, they are not integrated into the class. On the other hand, if you look at the active learner, so that means this person indulges himself in the teaching learning process. He gets involved in that. Maybe you get involved, the learner, when you ask the learner to do something, you ask the learner to respond to the question, you ask the learner to reflect on what he has already learned, or reflect on how did he perform a particular task or solved a particular problem, or you ask the learner to perform activities, tasks, problem solving, or you give him opportunity to interact with the other learners. Maybe in a small group discussion, the person is trying to interact with the other members, the peer group, or you have given a problem solving as a group activity where the student interacts with other students and then tries to find a solution to the problem. So this is where we say that there can be a passive learner and an active learner, and the whole shift in the teaching learning process has to be that from a passive learner, we need to convert our learner into active learning. The more active the learner in the classroom or in the laboratory or in the workshop, the higher will be the learning that will take place. And here you can see the definition of learning. The very first definition, that learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of interaction with the environment, was the definition given to learning by the behaviorist. And they said that it is a relatively permanent change. That means whatever a student has learned is retained by him for quite a long time, then only it qualifies for the learning. And for any learning to take place, the student needs to interact with the environment. So there ought to be some stimulus and there ought to be some response, and then it is the result will be acquisition of some additional knowledge, acquisition of some skill, or there may be change in the attitude of a person. The constructivist approach has tried to clarify the concept of learning, and they said that learning is an active process where the brain actively processes the incoming information, and it is always in the context in which it is taking place, and the person who is involved in the process needs to construct knowledge for himself. How the person gives constructs knowledge, either he tries to relate the new information with what he already knows, or the person tries to build association within the elements which are provided to him in the new piece of information. So learning according to constructivist approach is an active, contextualized, and involves construction of knowledge. So every human being constructs knowledge for himself or herself. Now let's see, when we talk about the teaching learning principles, then the attention of has to be on the learner itself, because it is the learner who has to learn and not the teacher who has to learn. So if you take this definition into account, then every learner tries to interpret the knowledge and constructs knowledge in a meaningful way. It is irrespective of the quantity of information. You may provide him a little bit of information, or you may overload him with the information. You overload or underload. But the student needs to construct meaning of that incoming information. And he would try to do that by relating it to what he already knows. And if you want that your learners be creative, then you need to create opportunities for challenge. Now, when you say challenge, that means a student needs to put in little extra effort so to gain knowledge out of that. Or maybe if you are giving a problem, it is difficult enough that student needs to expend effort to solve that problem, and that may lead to generation of a new solution to the problem. So then only the student will be creative. And learner-centered principle is that you need to, as a teacher, you need to cater to the individual differences that exist among the student. And these differences are with respect to the physical aspects of the individual, where the students differ with respect to age, they differ with respect to their height, weight, color, etc. Maybe these things do not appear to relate to the achievement, but when it comes to the laboratory or the workshop exercises, maybe height and weight somehow affect the performance of an individual. When it comes to the learning, you have another aspect of the individual, that is the intellectual aspect. There are differences with respect to the intelligence, and if you are familiar with the Gardner's uh, theory of intelligence, then you are sure that there are different 8 types Gardner has given, where he says that some people are linguistically very strong and they learn languages their forte, and they're very intelligent when they deal with language. There are students who are very good in logical, mathematical relationships. So they are very good in dealing with which in the task where mathematical knowledge or logical reasoning is involved. There are students who are good at spatial relations. So this is another intelligence where they're able to build association with the elements with respect to the space, the relationship among the elements. Or a person may be very, very intelligent with respect to the musical ability. So the person can listen to the musical rhythm and understands it in a better manner. Or the person may be very good when he or she has to understand himself. That is intrapersonal intelligence. Or the person has a special ability to understand others. That is interpersonal intelligence. Or the person has very high ability to deal with nature. So naturalistic intelligence. So the person takes care of the environment, understand the flora and fauna, and understand the nature's principle in a better manner. So a teacher needs to understand the differences with respect to the intellectual aspect of the individual. In addition to that, aptitude may be one where the differences lie among the student. One student may be very good in mathematical aptitude, another may be very good in musical aptitude, another may be very good in spatial or numerical ability or aptitude, sorry, not ability but aptitude, and so on. So if a student who has taken admission in mechanical engineering and possesses mechanical aptitude, the teacher is sure that with certain training the person would excel in the field of mechanical engineering. So a teacher needs to have the knowledge with respect to how creative the individual is. All have a creativity element, but in which aspect, in which field a person is creative, that needs to be understood by the teacher. Then there may be differences among the students with respect to their social aspect. Some students are introvert, others may be extrovert. Extrovert is a person who would very outgoing, who's very outspoken, and would like to be jumping from one activity to another. Whereas the introvert is a person who sticks to a particular job, doesn't open up, doesn't talk about the personal things, and he takes time to come out with a solution to the problem. He prefers to work independently rather than working in groups. Then you have another aspect to the individual, that is emotional aspect. And here you find that there are people who come under stress very easily, or the people who become very anxious. So people are high on anxiety. There are people who are low on anxiety, and there is moderate level of anxiety. Moderate level of anxiety is always essential. A minimum level of anxiety is essential to attempt a task or to learn something. But a high level of anxiety adversely affects the performance of an individual. Or you are familiar with now a term called emotional intelligence. And when you talk about emotional intelligence, there are people who understand their emotions in a better manner. They understand the emotions of others. They are able to manage their own emotions and regulate their emotions. Then, learning environment which needs to be created in the class should be friendly, socially interactive, and diverse, because you have people who would like to open up, share their apprehension, share their doubts. This will be possible if you are able to create a rapport with your students and you're friendly with them. They'll be able to share their apprehensions, doubts, problems with you. And that kind of environment need to be created in the class, so they'll be openly communicating to you. Then socially interactive, because the students who are there in the class have differences, then they should get an opportunity to interact with among themselves or with each other, to learn how the other individual thinks, how other individual approaches a task. And lot of learning takes place when you try to learn from your peer members. So peer learning plays an important role in the life of an individual. And once you create an environment which is socially interactive, some of these social skills, how to interact with others, how to be a good listener, how to become a leader, those qualities will also develop among the students. Another is that once it is a question of acquisition of skills, lot of practice is required on the part of learner. So learning by doing actively involves the learner, and thus students are able to acquire the skills. Then feedback is important element in a learner centered instruction. Feedback has to be relevant, specific, task related, and the feedback has to be corrective and immediate. So when I say feedback, corrective feedback should flow from the teacher to the student. That means the teacher needs to provide instructions with respect to where the weakness or the drawback, or what is the wrong in the answer given or the assignment given or the seminar being given by the student, and how to improve upon the quality of answer or the assignment or the presentation. So a student gets a chance to improve upon his performance. Then reinforcement has to be used by the teacher. When I say reinforcement, that means you must appreciate, give praise, give recognition to the person for the right behavior exhibited in the class. Now, when I say right behavior, that means if a student is punctual to a class, he needs to be appreciated. You must acknowledge the good behavior. If the student is able to give a right answer to the question which you have posed, maybe you give appreciation, saying well done or excellent or a right answer you have given. So you encourage that the student repeats the same behavior in future too. So this is the function of reinforcement, that you increase the chances of the student exhibiting the desired behavior in future too. Now, in addition to that, if you are dealing with students who are adults, who have attained the age of 18, or maybe the students who are from the work environment, as we are offering program where teachers are taking admission, then these adult learners, they are not content oriented, they are problem centered. They have certain problems in mind, and while they listen to somebody, they would like to find an answer to those problems. So their learning is not content centered but problem centered. And the teacher needs to create a condition whereby you pick up problems from the real context and then try to find solution to those problems. And the learners who are adult learners, they have a lot of experience. So that experience need to be utilized in the teaching learning situation, and you need to encourage their active participation in dealing with any topic which is at hand. So past experiences, they need to be recalled and they need to be re-examined in the light of the new data and the information. And many times it is said that if you have adult learners, maybe you have to start by unlearning what you have learned in the previous years, or maybe at a workplace, which is not the right thing. So you need to unlearn, learn, and relearn. So that cyclical process continues. And here, the climate of learning has to be collaborative. The teacher can collaborate with the students, or the students can collaborate with among themselves. So, as opposed to the authority oriented, where the teacher is only delivering the information. And it's very, very important that the learner or the student is actively involved in taking decision. And these decisions may be with respect to what is to be learned, how it is to be learned, and how the person needs to be evaluated. So, student, adult learner needs to be involved in decision making for what to learn, how to get evaluated, what activities are to be integrated. And you can see that evaluation leads to appraisal of needs, interest, and therefore new learning activities they need to be designed. And here you cannot go in for the traditional method, but you need to allow the adult learner to experiment with the new knowledge and then come to certain definite conclusions. So, adult learning principles as well as the learner centered principles both talk about that the center of attention has to be learner, and you need to create an environment where learner is active. And it has been demonstrated that effective teachers, they use learner centered approaches in comparison to less effective teachers. Now let's come to two terms which are quite often used in active learning. One is cooperative learning, another is collaborative learning. Any member from the audience would like to clarify these two terms if you have come across? Anyone who has some knowledge of what is cooperative learning and what is collaborative learning? Any idea?
Yes, ma'am. This is Dr. Rajin from GIT Jaipur.
Please go ahead, sir.
I would like to throw a light on the cooperative and collaborative. When you talk
Sure.
about the collaborative, the best example we are having with the NITT TTR Chandigarh at presently. We are collaborating with you for the ICT mode for the instructional delivery. If you talk about in-house, our faculties are cooperating with me for participating this program. So this can be a very good example.
Now, this is in a very different situation. Think of a classroom and let me know
Okay,
what
ma'am.
is cooperative and collaborative.
Okay, ma'am. When we give a very good case study in the classroom or when we teach with the students, definitely students helps in both the ways. They helps the faculty to understand the subjects very nicely, and if the faculty is, you can say, give some assignments which is beyond the classroom, that in that case they collaborate also, they go out, they execute that thing, they come back from the other institution, that is we call in our management SIP, that is a summer internship program, and that they go into the different organization, they work over there, they come back and they bring that particular things to our institution and present it. So that can be a one example of the student collaborative program.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other member who would like to throw light on that if you have come across these two terms? Now, friends, in the literature, when we talk about cooperative learning, is simply started with Johnson and Johnson. And according to them, when you allow your students to work in small groups and they work on a task, that task may be a problem, maybe a numerical, or it can be a problem, or you allow your students to work on a project. But all this work, when undertaken under the supervision of the teacher, it is an example of cooperative learning. The teacher is able to intervene at different points when it sees that students are going astray, or the explanation put forth by a student is incorrect. The teacher intervenes in the process and corrects the students. It is an example of cooperative learning. And the students are also evaluated, and this evaluation is not norm referenced but criterion referenced. That means students are not compared with each other. The performance is with respect to mastery. That means whether a student group is able to complete the task as per the desired standards, that is what is seen, and not seen with respect to relative ranking of the students as we are doing in the class. When it comes to cooperative learning, cooperative learning has been categorized into three different categories. One, there can be formal cooperation induced among the students. That is, the teacher takes decision with respect to how to group the students, what task is to be assigned, how to monitor, and how to assess. So it is introduced as a part of formal structure in the teaching learning situation. But maybe when you go to the class, you want to introduce a topic, and there becomes that you give a problem and you say, two students who are sitting together, they can discuss the problem and give me a answer to that problem. Now, this is where no pre-planning was done by the teacher, but on the spur of moment, the person is able to assign a task or a small problem or a question to a group of students and find an answer to. This becomes informal cooperative learning which has taken place within the class. Then there can be cooperative based groups. Now, here, when they talk about cooperative based group, so in the beginning of the semester, they say these four students will work together throughout the semester and facilitate each other's effort or attempt to learn. So, a study group is formed where these four members, four students in a group, they work throughout the semester. So, it is a stable group which is working. So it is formal is when a teacher, before going to the class, plans for how he's going to organize the groups, what task he's going to give to the student, how he's going to monitor and assess the task or the performance on the task. Informal is when the teacher tries to give a small question, a small problem, which is discussed within two or four members of the class, and that is decided, a decision is taken by the teacher on the spur of the moment. So it is not a pre-planned activity, it is not being monitored or assessed. Stable memberships are when you constitute study groups among the students who will work together for the whole semester, or maybe you have a stable group where you have a final year student also working with the juniors. So you say, okay, these four students, two from the second year, two from the first year, or two from the final year, joining hands with the first year, and they go on. So it becomes a stable membership group. Then what is collaborative learning? There is a thin line between collaborative learning and cooperative learning. Like cooperative learning, collaborative learning is also a social act. where you group your students into groups of 2 or 4 or 8, depending upon the size of the class, and they discuss, they share their expertise with each other. And here, collaborative, the group is required to reach a consensus, to come to the conclusion and find solution to a problem or a task or the problem. So again, you see, cooperative learning and collaborative learning both involve a task or a problem or a question which is to be discussed, or there is exchange of information, or there is collaboration among the members of that group, and they try to come to the solution of the problem, or they accomplish a particular task. Then what is the difference? The difference between, now here you can see, I think I'll skip that, I'll come to that, that cooperative learning is divided vertically. Now, when you say vertically, for example, you constitute a group where a project work is assigned in a group. Now, here, unless until the problem is selected, defined, the person cannot actually go for data collection. नहीं कर सकते. So once a task is completed, another task will be taken up. So this is a difference between cooperative and collaborative. In collaborative learning, the task is divided horizontally. Say you have 4 members and one topic is to be taken up. The students need to learn that topic. So you divide that whole topic into 4 different parts. One person who's going to collect the historical development of the concept, the information. He'll master that historical development. Another person who's dealing with the types of, so he is only concentrating on the types. Another person who is dealing with the procedure for applying that concept in day-to-day life. So the person tries to pick up how the person needs to apply that concept in day-to-day life or the world of work. And the fourth is the applications of that concept. So where that concept gets applied in industry. So 4 different students dealing with 4 different parts of the topic. Let's take a concrete example where I say maybe somebody dealing with DC machine, right? So the person, one student only tries to come out with what a DC machine is. Another person goes, what are the different types of DC machine? Another person is asked to find out how a DC machine works. So the procedure for working of DC machine. And the 4th student is dealing with the applications of DC machine in industry. So here, it is not vertical task, it is horizontal. A student working on concept, another working on types, another working on procedure, another working on application. So they can work independently. Once they have done independent learning of that, then they come together. First student makes other 3 learn about the concept. The second student learn other 3 to learn the types. Then the 3rd student, then the 4th student, and thus the topic gets complete, right? This is called jigsaw method. So here, when it is vertical, all students are participating at one level. It is cooperative learning. When the students are given parts of the task and they independently do, then make others learn that, this is collaborative learning. And another distinction is collaborative learning assumes that people have social skills. They already know how to interact with others. But cooperative learning doesn't make that assumption, right? So in nutshell, when we look at cooperative learning and collaborative learning, the very first you can see is in cooperative learning, students receive training in small groups. Whereas it is believed in collaborative learning that students have the social skills and you can build on those skills which the students bring to the classroom. The second distinction is activities are structured with each student having a specific role, and students organize and negotiate efforts themselves. So here, the students tries to identify each other's strengths. According to strengths, they try to allocate the duties. Then in cooperative learning, the teacher observes, listens, and intervenes. So wherever the teacher is convinced that students are not on the right track, or they are going astray from the topic or the problem or the question, then teacher tries to intervene in the process. And here, when you talk about collaborative, the teacher does not monitor and intervenes. The work is left to the students themselves. Then you see that at the end of the class, the students submit the work for evaluation in cooperative learning. And here, the students retain drafts to complete further work. And student assess individual and group performance, where the student assess individual and group performance in collaborative learning too. So this is same where the student assess each other's performance in the group because it's an group activity. With this distinction in mind, let's come to the categories of instructional activities for active learning. What could be included in active learning? Now, this is based upon articles which one of the authors have reviewed. Around 198 articles were reviewed, and they found that physical activity. Now, if you ask somebody to run in a relay race, you ask a person to perform basketball or play hockey or indulge in any co-curricular activities, maybe they organize an event, this physical activity which make them participate in that activity is an example of active learning. They learn from it. Another is physical activity related to subject matter. Now, say for example, in your class, you are teaching in front and back. Now here, if you ask the student to stand and ask another student to stand in front and another student to stand at the back, the concept of in front and back can be taught in English, right? Very easy to make people understand the concept of in front and back. Likewise, when you talk in terms of parallel, you talk of perpendicular, you can make students stand in two rows face to face. Maybe this is an example of parallel. When you ask one row and another row starting from the middle of that, you say this row of student is perpendicular to the other row of student. You teach that concept of perpendicular. So you indulge your student in some physical activity related to the subject matter. Or maybe if I have to teach a concept of scatteredness, I make student stand anywhere in the room where they like. It is a, so they are standing here and they're scattered group. But if we want them to stand in a straight line, I teach a concept of that they are standing in a straight line. You can teach some of these simple concepts by involving the people into a physical activity in the classroom related to a subject. Then you can also have certain activities which are just like a fun, the play activities. Maybe that can be in a form of a puzzle, that can be in the form of a game. The difference is in the game you have rules. So those rules need to be observed. So when you involve a person, say for example, when you in creativity, you ask the person to join the 9 dots by 4 straight lines without lifting the pen from the paper, it is nothing but a game. With the problem you have given, you have imposed certain conditions that he cannot lift the pen from the paper. The 9 dots are to be joined by 4 lines. These are the rules. You are imposing certain conditions, and these are to be straight lines. That is also condition imposed upon the person. So the people learn through a game. So here, rather than giving individually, you can think of assigning certain such small games to groups of students, maybe 2, maybe 4, maybe 6, depending upon. When you are teaching the principles of management in the institution, maybe you have designed a game whereby you have announced the rules, and now the people have to organize and exhibit a quality of team in identifying the treasures. Normally, treasure hunt is one of the games which is used in team building. So, can that be used? Right? Another is certain academic tasks. Now, when you say you are going to solve numerical, you are going to do the problem solving of high difficulty level, you are assigning an assignment to your students in groups, you are assigning a project to your students. It is nothing but example of academic task as an active learning strategy. And you can think of certain experiential activities. Experiential activities means where the student is provided certain experience with the help of. Now we listen to member from GIT who said that when you give case study, it's an example where a case is given to a group of students and they try to analyze the case and find out what can solve the problem in the given institution or organization or the industry. Or say for example, you have picked up a case of a plane crash. Now let us do you build up the context, let the student identify what could be the plausible reasons for a plane crash, and then you try to give them what exactly the account happened, and they can compare their line of thought with the line of actual cause which led to the plane crash, and then crystallize on. Then field trips. When you take your students, this is a common practice that we take our students, maybe architectural students study the architecture studies. You take the civil engineering students for a field trip where you show them what is happening in the field, or you take the students to the industry, show them the manufacturing processes taking place in that. Now, this kind of activity can be converted into a active learning, either cooperative or collaborative. Now, here you can give a set of questions to the group of students. 4, they have to find an answer to those questions. Another group of students, another set of questions. So everybody is actively involved in finding answer to those questions. They are not going without any focus or without any objective. So there is an objective to find answer to those questions, right? Or you have a group of students going to an industry. So you tell the students one group is going to interview the people on the shop floor. Another group is going to interview the people at the middle management level. Another group is going to interview the senior management people. So, three of them collecting the data from three different sources, then combining it. Then the students, when they come to the class, they orient all the class members to what middle management has to say, what the shop floor people have to say, and what the senior management has to say. So there is a complete document which is available, and you can synthesize that and say this is the where the students have gone for the field trip. So they come out with some, maybe you are dealing with problem, you are dealing with technology, you are dealing with how decision making takes place in the industry, and so on. Then research is another. When you give a problem or you allow students to pick up research based projects, where they say, for example, you have civil engineering students, there is a community around the college, and you ask the students to constitute themselves into groups, and they survey the community to come out with the problems related to water and sanitation in that community. So what does student do? One group takes up one part of the region, another takes another, another takes another, another takes another. So the whole community survey can be carried out maybe within a week's time. Otherwise, maybe it takes a month for the student to do that. But a group of 4 or 6 students in each group, so 4 groups can survey the 4 parts of the community and complete that. Or maybe a students can take up a project in groups. Again, this is an experiential activity which is being organized, and this is normally done. The only problem with us as teachers is when we give them tasks, we only constitute groups and we forget that they work in teams. That is very, very important. Then there can be role play. Now, when I say role play can be used for number of purposes. Maybe you are teaching, say, a manager, how the manager should deal with the subordinate. A role play exercise can be designed for that purpose. How you have a boss who's emotionally intelligent, a boss who is not emotionally intelligent is going to interact with the subordinates. You can design role play and teach the concept of emotional intelligence. Or you are dealing with interpersonal skills and you design role play exercise. By dramatizing that, the students learn how an empathetic listener would attend to what is being said, and how a person who is just hearing, how will he react to what is being said. So number of role play exercises can be designed. Or your students are likely to be interviewed at the end for interviews. So you can have a team of interviewers, a panel, a student who is appearing in that. Even this is a role play exercise where a group of students acts as an interviewer, one acts as a interviewee, and they learn the tricks of mock interviews and how to be more effective in interviews. Experiential activity can also be in the form of poetry. A student is asked to write a piece of poetry based upon whatever he has experienced in the environment. So maybe this is a very creative thing, story writing. So can you build a story on, say you are taking a student to a field trip, leisure trip. So a student can be given the task to build a story, at what time they started, what kind of transport mode they used, where were the stops in between, what they did, and they build up a story and give a narrative of what they have experienced. This helps. Travelogues they can write. Travelogues, right. So they can write. So journal. Journal is when you maintain an account of something which you have done. That is a journal, not journal of psychology or journal of engineering and so on. Yeah, that is not the journal. So this is based upon what I said. Garmin and Pient Nida, they have surveyed 198 abstracts dealing with active learning, cooperative or collaborative, and they have said you can classify the various activities into 5 major categories: the physical activity related to subject matter, the play, the academic task, the experiential activities which you can organize. Now let's come to a spectrum of active learning strategies that can be used in the classroom situation. Now here you see this has been given by O'Neill and Pindergrover. And here they have said you can have very simple activities integrated into teaching learning, or you can have very complex activities for indulging your students into active learning. So let's take up one by one some of these activities. At the bottom, you can see from the simple end, pause for reflection. Now, when a teacher takes a pause in the class, he is allowing time to the students to reflect back what has been dealt with. This is a simple activity where you are making your student active. Now, this is not cooperative or collaborative, but independent activity where the student indulges in that. But if you allow two students to reflect on what has been dealt in the past 5 minutes or 2 minutes, it becomes which one? Cooperative or collaborative? Vertical कौन था? Cooperative. Collaborative was horizontal. So collaborative learning. Writing 1 minute paper. So when you say, I have dealt with 2 parts of my topic, take 1 minute and summarize what you have learned. 1 minute. Write what important you have learned from this. 1 minute paper. Or you have a topic, you say, please write what do you think about this issue. 1 minute. Allow 1 minute. And maybe you allow groups to work as 1 minute paper. Right? Then you can have self-assessment. Self-assessment, if a person has completed a task, you have a certain set criteria. You give that criteria to the student and ask him to evaluate himself with respect to that criteria. This kind of exercise indulges the learner in thinking, in comparing, in evaluating, right? So you are making the learner active, making the learner active. Large group discussion. Now here, when you indulge in involving the whole class of say 30 students or more on discussion on one particular topic, is a large group discussion. Otherwise, you can क्या कर सकते हो? You can constitute small groups within a large group for a small group discussion. And that becomes handy where you have 8 to 10 students in each group. So you allow the students to discuss on a particular topic and then make a presentation on this. Your student becomes active in the class, right? Then you have another strategy called think, pair, share. No, I still remember that when I was school, my teacher was using it. Now the name is given, but she was using it. She would float a question, say, think for a minute, then discuss with the person sitting next to you, share your ideas with him, and then come to the consensus. Think, pair, share. Simple activity. And this I have used at master's level also when dealing with definitions. So I give them a sheet of paper, student reads that, then he tries to frame his ideas of the concept. Then I ask them to go into small groups or pair, first pair, and then come to the conclusion. Then maybe in a larger. Then I convert it into pyramiding also sometimes. First you combine two students, then you combine four students, then you combine eight students. Ultimately, the class comes to the conclusion. You actively involve your learners into the teaching learning. You can have triad groups rather than comparing two pairs. You can have triads. Three students work together in a particular class. Then you have peer review. Now, when I say peer review simply means that a work done by one student is reviewed by the other student. So, a student tries to evaluate the work done by one member of the class against a given set standard criteria, and then you make your students active learner in the classroom situation. Or instead of one student reviewing the work of another student, you can have group evaluation. And this is a strategy which is again tried out in the class, where a case study was given to the student, the case study and certain questions, and student answered the question. Then he made a small presentation in the class, and then other members of the class tried to evaluate the performance of the student. This is group evaluation. Or even when you assign a task in groups, a group does the case study, then each group makes a presentation. The other groups in the class try to evaluate the performance of a particular group. So if you have six groups, each group makes a presentation, each group's performance is evaluated. So this is group evaluation. Then you have brainstorming sessions, which can be easily integrated into your teaching learning. When I say brainstorming, no, even the whole class can work as a group. When you say brainstorming, if the teacher is doing it, then you float a question. Say, for example, what features of this pen can be modified? Now, a person may come out with the physical aspects, person may come out with the ink that is being used, person, so different ideas can be floated, the material can be one. Brainstorming can also be taken up when you constitute small groups and you give a problem and you say, okay, to solve this problem, generate the various solutions. So people are generating ideas how to solve that problem. So small groups can also be constituted, or a whole class where the teacher is trying to monitor and इसमें evaluate करना नहीं होता कुछ भी. So brainstorming, it is simply generation of ideas. So the quantum is important, not the worthiness of that idea is important. Any foolish idea coming from the student is recorded. After that, a small evaluation committee, that is brainstorming. So here you can use that. You can, case studies can be easily integrated. And many a times my colleagues from engineering and technology say that, no, it is management domain. No, it is not. Even in engineering, on Science Direct, you come across number of cases, maybe a building. क्या हुआ? Building क्या होती है? Fall करती है, right? A bridge which collapses, right? Earthquake which has resulted into devastation is a case, right? a plane crash हो गया है, machine functional नहीं रही है, shaft टूट गई है. So there are a number of cases which are available on Science Direct. Now those cases, with little modification, you can use it as a case study for your students, right? So think of, in engineering and other allied subject also, case studies can be utilized. And case writing nowadays, there are a number of workshops which are held and people are trained in writing a case. So you can even think of generating your own cases and using those cases in the classroom. So when you use case studies as an individual student in groups, it is an active learning strategy. Then interactive lectures. Now, whenever the term lecture is used, it is said it is one-way lecture. The teacher is only presenting the information. But there can be two-way interactive lecture. Now, what are some of the activities which you can inbuild into the lecture that converts it into from one way to two way? कौन सी एक्टिविटी हो सकती है? बोलो. A one-way lecture को two-way lecture बनाने के लिए what are the activities which can be integrated? Okay, I have got two answers: questions and group discussions. Absolutely.
Ma'am, besides we have also
हाँ जी.
besides we have also videos.
Yeah.
We can request the student to narrate some good incidents or the experience. Sharing programs, things can be inculcated in the classroom. Then beyond this, we can have a small sort of you can say the presentation from the student, and also even if they have got some smartphones, they can download the things from the smartphone and can come up with that thing on the topic. I think this is a very important part which is coming.
Right. Right. So a number of suggestions have come forth from the participants. Let's see. One is questions. And questioning is the most easiest thing which a teacher can do in the class, because a teacher can generate large number of questions at different points of time in the class. Only thing you need to remember is, while you are generating questions, there can be questions which test only the factual information, remembering at the level of the student. Some questions which test understanding, some questions which test application, and higher than application abilities of ability to analyze, evaluate, and create. So posing of question, framing of questions, and responding to the question, these are three important things which need to be taken into account. Then we have discussions, small group discussion. So before you giving strategies for environmental protection, you can throw this question to the students in small groups. Let them come out with how environment can be protected. So they give you the strategies. Then small groups are making a presentation on that. Maybe this is 10 minutes activity given to the students. So you can think of, say for example, you have taught AC machine, now you are teaching DC machine. AC machine, they understand, you have explained DC machine. Now ask the student to compare the similarities and differences between AC and DC machine. 10-minute activity. They discuss, they come out with differences and make a small presentation of 2 to 3 minutes in the class, right? Another colleague said, you can show a video, there are number of questions which they need to answer, then they answer those questions and make a presentation on that. लेक्चर में ही आपने वीडियो इंटीग्रेट की, वीडियो पे ही क्वेश्चंस थे, even then you make your students active. You can have what we were saying, think, pair, share. This activity can be embedded into your lecture. That makes it interactive. You can have pyramiding technique. As I said, You have 2 students, then 4 students, then 8 students, 16, and then all 32 students. Pyramiding technique. You can have debates for and against, right? So whether the plastics be used as water bottles, this is a question, for and against. Then you ask one group who is in favor to speak against, then against wala favor me. So both the groups learn the both the things. Then you can see you have active review sessions where you are using games, you are using simulations. So in engineering also now you have large simulation softwares available. So you can use where you can control number of variables, see the effect of one variable on the other, or you can see the combined effect of number of variables on the another variable. So this is possible only through simulation. In reality, you may not be able to do. Now, say for example, if I have to test a beam, how much load it can bear, it cannot be done in reality. But yes, simulation would give that kind of, so I can simulate and then see what will be the effect of things. Wherever there's a high risk involved, simulations can be used. And then they can be tested, verified in the real context. And likewise, games. So you can think of where games will be fun, simulations can be where the high risk activities are there. So people learn through games and simulations. Then role playing. Role playing, I have already explained to you that where the person takes up a role of a particular person, object, or phenomena, and then they react to. And it is dramatization of a real condition, right? It's not a real, but dramatization. And in the process, people learn so many things, right? Then jigsaw. Jigsaw discussion is where, again, I gave you example. You pick up a topic, divide the topic into 4 parts, 4 students working on each part, then ultimately they combine the whole, it becomes complete. It's jigsaw, right? Then inquiry learning. Now here comes the question, how do we organize the experimental work, the practical work for our students? We have a manual which is verify Ohm's law. Ohm's law already पढ़ चुके हैं. लेबोरेटरी मैनुअल में उसके पूरे स्टेप्स लिखे हुए हैं. हाउ टू वेरीफाई Ohm's law. The student learns nothing. But if you design an experiment where the student can explore and experiment with new things, not the guided steps or the orderly steps to be followed, it becomes inquiry learning. That is, you have the material available in the lab. Now go and experiment and explore. Allow the students to experiment with. So they can come out with certain new things. I just give you one example. A teacher in the workshop practice had a group of 4 students working on one lathe machine. So he gave them 3 pieces of the metal. He gave 3 angles of the machine, the cutter, 3 speeds of the machine. He told the students to experiment with. And then he said, tell me which particular material is efficiently cut at what angle and at what speed of the machine. Now this he never specified to them, but the students came out with the conclusion. ये कभी नहीं भूलोगे आप अगर हाथ से निकल गया. This is inquiry learning, right? Then you have forum theater where again role play was on a small scale. Theater is the complete theatrical experience you provide to your students. So it is at a large scale. And then maybe in engineering, I'm little doubtful forum theater kahan hoga, but somebody can explore. Experiential learning, when you take the students for site visits, maybe to the industry, maybe to the civil engineering site or maybe to the architectural buildings, and you show them the designs and so on. So all these methods can be used by the teacher for enhancing knowledge or skills or developing the right kind of attitudes, in addition to taking benefit of the social skills or developing or enhancing the social skills on the part of the students. So this is all about active learning. Now the house is open for what are likely to be some of the benefits of active learning. क्या बेनिफिट होंगे? आप बोलेंगे, मुझे नहीं बोलना.
Ma'am, the best example we are getting from your end, the two-way process we are having it.
हाँ,
Uh,
उसको फायदा क्या हुआ?
Faida, ma'am, first thing if you talk about is the knowledge enhancement.
Okay.
Definitely there is a gap. If you talk about from the senior faculty to the junior faculty, that gap has been filled up very nicely by like you people, like extremely from yourself, that a lot of good thing you have poured to us. So that is the first benefit coming out. And secondly, whatever we were not aware, that has also been covered up through the interactive delivery of the content. Then this is what you can say, the virtual mode which is coming up is a new things from the new generation also.
चलो वर्चुअल की बात नहीं करेंगे,
ICT mode is
एक्टिव की बात करो. एक्टिव की, हाउ एक्टिव लर्निंग इज बेनिफिटिंग द स्टूडेंट्स.
एक्टिव में मैम अगर वर्चुअल आ रहा है तो डेफिनेटली इट इज गिविंग मोर एनहांसमेंट.
ओके, एनीथिंग एल्स फ्रॉम दिस ग्रुप? Retention is more. Retention is more. Okay. Anybody from Baba Freed group of institution would like to add? हाँ जी. अगर आपका लर्नर एक्टिव है तो क्या फायदा होने वाला है मैम? What are likely to be the benefits?
Actually, I think it will be more interesting for the students because they are sharing their own views.
Right. Right. Because interest will be more because they'll be sharing their own experiences. Any other benefit?
If they are sharing their own views, it means there is some participation of the students.
Yeah, so participation can be ensured. Fine. Thank you so much. Over to Indraprasth. Indraprasth Engineering College. इंद्रप्रस्थ है कि नहीं है जी? देखो कोई बैठा भी है खाली. हाँ जी. How active learning is going to help? मेरी आवाज नहीं जा रही? हेलो.
Hello.
जी मैम.
Hello, ma'am. Yes, active learning will be very helpful for the students if we can definitely manage them learn actively. This is the main target. Students are not learning actively or passively nowadays. So it will be helpful if we make them learn actively. So it is going to make the concept of the subject clear to the students. That is the most important thing, I think.
Thank you. Ma'am, how many participants are there in your at your center?
Ma'am, 17.
17 बैठे हैं? बैठे हैं? अभी बैठे?
Yes,
अच्छा, okay. नजर नहीं आ रहे हैं. चलो.
We have got terminals there, na, TFT.
Okay. Maybe I'm not able to see them. Thank you. So, well, friends, the very first benefit that will accrue is to arouse and sustain the motivational level of the learner. Because once you are sitting in the class and you are not given a chance to participate, to interact with the teacher or other members of the class, it becomes boring and monotonous at times. So you can arouse the motivation, and secondly, you are bringing their previous knowledge linked with the new information. So there is greater interaction, greater involvement, so students remain motivated, and learning is at the higher level. That means you develop ability to apply and higher than application abilities, and that learning is deeper where the concepts, principles get clarified. So fundamental knowledge, which is very, very essential, it is not superficial knowledge, but a deep learning that is the outcome of active learning. And retention is longer. This point has been given by one of the participants. So people retain the knowledge for a long time because they were actively involved in it. This I have said, that at the same time, when you involve your learners, then you are able to, when you group them into fours or into twos or into six or eight, then they develop the ability to interact with others, ability to understand others, ability to listen to others, right? Ability to lead others, ability to accept others. ये कौन सी है? ये all social skills they try to acquire. And this is all about active learning. I stop here. If any member has anything to supplement is welcome. Any member, any question is welcome. Over to. Forum theater is where you have a group of students who work together and present certain idea or raise an issue in a theatrical form. These are used in creative arts. Say social issue where you are talking of panchayats, right? So you form a group in your class who will take up that issue and dramatize that issue to create social awareness among the public. That is forum theatre.
Well, the suggestions are very valuable. Ma'am, the thing is that I'm related to the subject of mathematics.
मैथ एक मिनट आ रही हूँ. मैथमेटिक्स में है तो आपके क्या है कि ग्रुप प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग कैन बी डन बाय द स्टूडेंट. अब सिलेबस को पूरा करना इज नॉट, ये गलत हो रहा है. वॉट एवर आई टीच दे शुड लर्न, दैट शुड बी द फोकस, नॉट जस्ट कंप्लीशन ऑफ सिलेबस. उसके लिए ब्रिज कोर्सेज पंजाब स्टेट बोर्ड ऑफ टेक्निकल एजुकेशन हैज स्टार्टेड. Likewise, Haryana has taken the lead. I think we need to look into what are the online courses which can bridge the gap that exists. So we can also make use of the online courses here. So you have Khan Academy dealing with mathematical. Khan Academy जानते हो कि नहीं? Online. चलो बाद में बात करेंगे. So that is one example. You have IIT Bombay floating number of programs. Then you have SWIM portal of the government, which has so many courses now available. So think which course is relevant to your student at which level. Then you have all your study.com, which deals with all the +2 level tak ke courses ko deal kar rahe hain. So think where you can tie up with your student. Ji, you have another question?
Yes, ma'am. Question is there.
Boliye.
In India, we are just talking about adult education, distance education, and somehow we are just leveraging the online education in the active learning part. But if you see the Western part, they have already started in the primary education. The most important thing of active learning is through the online. So how you can add up this thing, because you know we are just having a lot of gap, and still that gap has been escalated. It's not reducing that particular gap. We are having the continuous dropout also. We are continuously having the poor quality of the education also. So how in an active learning this can enhance?
Now, as far as the dropout, first I'll deal with बाहर क्या हो रहा है उसको तो मैं नहीं टच कर रही हूँ, but I'll simply go by when you say active learning. One of the reasons why people drop out from the system is that the classes have become monotonous. We are not able to generate interest of the student in the topics which we are dealing with or the subjects we are teaching with, or there is a remote connection between what we are dealing with what is happening in the real world or the world of work, right? So active learning is one where you are trying to relate what a student context is, where he's residing, what problem is facing, and then you are trying to link up what you are teaching with and involving him in the real development of teaching learning process. तो कहीं ना कहीं एक फैक्टर उसको जब आप अराउज कर लेते हो द नेसेसरी लेवल ऑफ मोटिवेशन ऑफ द लर्नर, chances are that stagnation will not be there, dropouts will rate will reduce. अगर ये reason था. Secondly, what you have said is online. Online में बहुत सारी चीजें हैं. Say for example, I'm teaching a particular subject. I also go to the internet, find out there are 10 websites which provide very valid, up-to-date material on the topic I'm going to deal in the class. Now, how do I relate that internet sites with my teaching? In the class also, I can tell the student, as you have, I think you gave the suggestion that while you are teaching, you can ask the student to go to a particular internet site, see the explanation for the concept you have taught, then try to answer few of your questions in the class so that you can relate to. Another is online learning, which we have said, and I earlier made a comment that all universities now, UGC has given this freedom to the universities that 20% of the courses can be learnt by the students through online open courses. Whether that is available on IIT Bombay site, whether it is available on FedEx, whether it is available on Coursera, or whether it is available on Khan Academy, person or Stanford or Harvard. So wherever a relevant course is available and you think that will link to your degree and you're going to give credit for that, a student has the choice to learn. अब देखिए ऑनलाइन लर्निंग का फायदा क्या है. Maybe the person who is offering an online course is an expert in that area, but is available in one of the universities. Now through online, that knowledge is available, accessible to a large number of people. Another is when it is online course, it is ensured that you have different modalities to learn. You have the notes available, you have the PowerPoints available, you have web-based series available lectures, you have the videos supplementing those web-based lectures. So you also have webinars of experts on that particular topic, and student can choose from. He need not go to all the sources. If the person is able to be very happy with the self-learning content module, he learns the material through that. Another person may try to supplement it with the videos and so on. So how those sources of information have been clubbed together, that has to be seen, whether they supplement or whether they are adding to each other's body of knowledge. अगर एडिट ऐड कर रहे हैं तो सब कुछ देखना पड़ेगा, अगर सप्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं तो जरूरत नहीं है, जरूरी भी नहीं है. So one has to look into. So online courses are another thing is online courses, accessibility to education. Accessibility to education has increased. अभी हम कह रहे हैं कि आपके 26% लोग ही हायर एजुकेशन में एनरोल्ड हैं, GER। तो अगर आप ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज देते हो, accessibility increases. Another is the quality is definitely going to be better if you have the expert dealing with it. अगर बहुत मेहनत करके कोई अच्छा कोर्स बनेगा ना, तो उसकी क्वालिटी डेफिनेटली अच्छी होगी. So quality wise, it will be good. Another is that you are utilizing the technology skill which is already available with your student. वो तो tech savvy है. Only thing is you are now giving him opportunity to utilize that skill. तो क्लास में बैठ के सुनने के बजाय गाड़ी में जाते जाते वो पढ़ रहा है, मोबाइल लर्निंग के थ्रू ही इज लर्निंग. There are now number of mobile apps which are available. So he need not be present in the class. और आगे एक और सुनिए, आजकल जो हमारे कॉलेजेस की दशा हो गई है, नॉन अटेंडी है. थ्योरी में तो बच्चा आता ही नहीं है, प्रैक्टिकल तो मैं चलो बाद में बात करूंगी, वहां पे 50 to 60% ही होता है, पर थ्योरी में इट इज नॉट एसेंशियल फॉर द स्टूडेंट. मैं डिग्री कॉलेजेस में तो इतना बुरा हाल है कि बच्चे क्लासेस लगाते नहीं है आजकल, लेकिन अपने भी थ्योरी में बहुत सारे ऐसे कॉलेजेस हैं जहाँ पे इट इज नॉट, अटेंडेंस हो जाती है, यू कम और यू डोंट कम टू द क्लास. उस केस में अगर मैं ऑनलाइन कोर्स ऑफर करूं एंड द स्टूडेंट लर्न थ्रू ऑनलाइन एंड देन अपीयर इन द एग्जामिनेशन, व्हाट इज द हार्म इन इट? आई सेव लॉट ऑफ मनी एंड लॉट ऑफ रिसोर्सेस. थ्योरी के केस में, और सम ऑफ द टॉपिक्स, से फॉर एग्जांपल सम ऑफ द टॉपिक्स वेयर वेबिनार्स आर अवेलेबल. बहुत अच्छी साइट्स हैं जहाँ पे वेबिनार्स भी एक्सपर्ट्स के अवेलेबल हैं. IUCE इज वन ऑफ देम. सो आप स्टूडेंट को बोल सकते हैं कि वेबिनार के थ्रू ही लर्न्स दैट, एंड देन यू हैव सर्टेन टास्क, असाइनमेंट्स, प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग व्हिच यू असाइन टू देम टू मेक श्योर दैट ही हैज लर्न थ्रू ऑनलाइन. तो ऑनलाइन में आपकी accessibility, inclusiveness and quality you can assure. And और क्या था आपका? एक सवाल और था, भूल गई हूं मैं जी. डॉक्टर नितिन
Ma'am, I have a question.
जी, प्लीज गो हेड मैम.
Ma'am, you have three days of the classroom.
क्या मैम आपको क्वेश्चन? नहीं, जस्ट अ मिनट, आपका क्वेश्चन क्लियर नहीं हुआ. प्लीज रेज द क्वेश्चन.
Ma'am, am I audible?
अभी ठीक है मैम, बताइए.
Hello.
हाँ जी मैम, ऑडिबल है, प्लीज गो हेड.
Clear, ma'am?
हाँ जी, अभी ठीक है, बोलिए.
मैम, जैसा कि आप बता रहे हैं कि that technology can be utilized for enhancing the student learning. Ma'am, our challenge is like we are the faculty are motivated and they prepare their lecture with full enthusiasm and they enter in the classroom.
जी.
And when they see and they try to inculcate an active learning sessions also there, but they feel that the spark is missing in the students. So so what should be done so that our motivation is not lost? We keep on trying those active learning experiments and the students, they are motivated. Whenever they are coming to the class, they should be enthusiastic and they should learn in that session. So what type of skills we need to inculcate in ourselves?
I think the question which you have raised, ma'am, is very pertinent. At present, the input which is coming to the institution is not up to the mark, because the previous knowledge which they should bring to the classroom, actually they are not bringing to the classroom situation, and they're much less focused on what you are teaching. They have many other goals to be achieved. So what needs to be done? One thing, the students which are coming and whatever subject you are going to teach, one very important is that you arouse the necessary motivation level by building the relevance of the subject to the students. And that building of relevance is by telling them the worth of what you are teaching in today's context and after they complete their studies when they go to the world of work. So maybe the future value of the topic which you are teaching. Another, when you say it is active learning, then the students need to own the responsibility of learning. Now, for example, as a teacher, I'm going to divide the whole group into small groups and I am giving a topic for discussion. Now, discussion can only be meaningful if the students have come prepared for that topic and they know it. Otherwise, the discussion will not be meaningful. So the students need to own the responsibility for their own learning, and that depends upon how a teacher tries to take up. If you say the teachers themselves are very enthusiastic, motivated, and they indulge in active learning, then how do I ensure? One thing is, abruptly, I cannot introduce an activity which requires a pre-planning. So once a pre-planning is done, the teacher needs to ensure that students have read the material which is to be discussed in the class. If they are not prepared, the whole idea flops. And many times we are losing our motivation to teach. Another thing is that if you find that there are gaps in the knowledge of the learners which they should bring to the class, find out the ways to bridge that gap. And that bridging can be done, as I said, Punjab State Board of Technical Education has taken a decision to offer bridge courses. Now, the students who are weak in maths or physics, they are bound to take up those courses and clear those courses and earn the credit for those courses. So make it that you have all those arrangements in place, or you identify any online course which is available and make your students understand that before they clear this next semester, they're going to have this paper. This is a prerequisite, so they register and clear that course. That is another strategy. Another is somewhere where the motivation is lacking among your students, then whatever the management style says, you become a part, use a participatory style of management. So you become a part of that team and participate in the problem solving or project based research. Try to be part of that group and be accessible to your students at difficult points, or facilitate or provide guidance to them at frequent intervals. So that will help. I think it's very, very situational because educational sciences is not prescriptive. So you need to look into the students, the subject, the learning environment which you are providing to them, and then what strategy works for one teacher may not work at all for another teacher. So you need to experiment with and then crystallize on the strategy. Hello?
To have the suggestions which you have given. Definitely, we will try to incorporate
Okay.
and see the results.
Thank you so much. Anything else? G, another question? You have another question, sir?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. So, any other question from any other center? So, friends, thank you very much.